Imagine for a second, just imagine that you're tasked with running a multi-billion-dollar financial operation.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And you have millions of customers relying on you during literally the most critical moments of their lives.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. But there's a catch. The department that handles the money speaks French,
Right.
and the department that handles the actual policies speaks Japanese.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah, and the only way they can communicate is by sending a fax to a guy named Dave, who manually types everything into an Excel spreadsheet from like 1998.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a comedy sketch, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually a remarkably accurate description of how a significant portion of the modern insurance industry operates behind the scenes.
It's kind of terrifying, and that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive for you today. We've got our hands on a comprehensive internal presentation detailing the Majesco Spring 26 release.
Specifically for life, annuities, and health insurance technology, right? Or L&AH for those in the industry.
Yeah. Exactly. And we really want to unpack this release for you because it represents this aggressive attempt to completely tear down that dysfunctional faxing Dave scenario I just described.
It's an incredibly ambitious set of documents. And honestly, what struck me immediately is the tone of it all.
How so?
Well, enterprise software updates usually lead with promises of, minor efficiency gains or security patches. They don't usually swing for the fences philosophically.
They really don't. I mean, the presentation literally kicks off with a Steve Jobs quote.
Right, the one about innovation.
Yeah, innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And Manu Shah, who is the president and chief product officer at Majesco, frames this spring 26 release as a fundamental shift in what an insurance carrier should expect from their digital foundation.
He leans really heavily into this concept of agentic AI.
He does. And so the mission for our deep dive today is to move past all that marketing language. Think of this not just as a software patch, but as a central nervous system upgrade for an entire industry.
That's a great analogy. And the big takeaway, the so what, for you listening right now, is understanding how a highly regulated, mathematically complex industry is practically implementing AI.
Right, moving from spreadsheets to actual intelligence.
Exactly. It's about turning compliance from this massive operational burden into a strategic advantage. The underlying theme here is really the transition from reactive to proactive.
Because insurance has historically been a very reactive business. You wait for a claim, you process the paperwork, you react to a new state law.
Exactly. But this source material suggests a system architecture that actually anticipates the complexity before it becomes a bottleneck.
So for upgrading the central nervous system, we should probably start with the brain. Let's look at what the presentation calls co-pilot but better.
Right, the L&AH Intelligent Core's new AI capabilities.
They are defining this AI not just as a chatbot, but as a mission-critical teammate. But, I mean, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. The hype is real.
We've all used so-called AI assistants. You ask them a question, they give a decent answer, but 2 minutes later, you ask a follow-up, and they act like an intern with amnesia.
Yes, the intern with amnesia.
They completely forget what you were just talking about, and you have to start the prompt over from scratch. So how does this Majesco system avoid that trap?
Well, that amnesia phenomenon is the exact reason early generative AI struggled in enterprise software. An AI that can write a polite email is nice, but in insurance, you are dealing with deeply interconnected, multi-step workflows.
Right, it's not just one question and done.
Exactly. And the documentation here uses a very specific, crucial term. They call it session aware.
Session aware, meaning it actually remembers what you're doing across different screens.
It goes deeper than just remembering the chat history, actually. A session aware engine, in this context, means the AI maintains a grasp on the underlying data schema of the specific task you're working on.
Even if you jump around the software.
Even as you move through completely different modules. Let's say an underwriter is looking at a complex group life policy. They ask the AI to summarize the risk profile based on a new census file. The AI does that.
Okay.
Then the underwriter moves over to the billing module to model out how a backdated contract change will impact premium collection.
And the AI just follows them.
Yes. A session-aware AI carries the mathematical and contextual reality of that policy with it. It doesn't need to be reprompted with the basic facts of the account.
Wow, so it actually acts like a teammate who is sitting next to you watching the screen.
Exactly. It also includes a built-in prompt gallery and history.
Which seems like a small detail, but if you're trying to standardize how, 1,000 different employees interact with an AI, that's huge.
It really is. Having a unified library of queries prevents people from having to essentially learn a new programming language just to do their jobs.
It standardizes the input so you get reliable output.
Precisely. But the element in this section that really defines enterprise-grade AI versus consumer-grade AI is the focus on traceability.
Traceability, like showing its work.
Yes, the documentation emphasizes transparent, trustworthy AI with clear audit trails.
Well, yeah, because if an AI makes a decision on a medical claim or a life insurance payout, you can't just tell an auditor, well, the computer said so.
Right, a black box AI is just an unacceptable liability in a regulated industry. The AI must be able to show its math.
So if the State Department of Insurance asks why a specific rate was applied to a voluntary benefits package,
The system has to generate an immutable log showing the exact logic, data points, and policy provisions the AI utilized to arrive at that conclusion.
by making it highly auditable, Majesco is positioning AI as a tool for governance, not just a shortcut.
Exactly. And the practical application of this really jumped out in the Clean Vantage system updates.
Yes. The sources mention a new compliance agent rolling out in Update 1. It completely replaces their old absence leave help tool.
Which is a huge deal for absence specialists.
The goal is to drastically cut down the hours those specialists spend manually researching laws. We'll get into the specific state laws a bit later, but the AI is basically acting as a research assistant who already memorized the rule book.
However, and this is a big however, a brilliant, auditable AI brain is practically useless if it's starved of information.
Right, if it can't reach the data it needs.
Which transitions us naturally into the structural engineering side of this release. The intelligence is only as good as the data it can access.
Which brings us to the tearing down of silos.
Yes, breaking down the walls.
The presentation outlines a major push to unify major medical, ancillary, and voluntary benefits onto a single shared core. We are talking about the policy administration system, billing, and distribution, all operating from the same foundation.
It's a massive consolidation.
But honestly, reading this, I was a little baffled. Why was it ever separated in the first place? It sounds like ordering a burger, fries, and a shake, but having to go to 3 different restaurants and getting 3 separate receipts.
It is exactly like that. But you have to remember, it's rarely intentional design. It's usually the result of corporate history, mergers and acquisitions.
Ah, right. Companies buying other companies.
Imagine a massive insurance carrier. 50 years ago, they built a monolithic mainframe system specifically for major medical insurance. It's robust, but it's incredibly rigid.
So 20 years later, the market demands they offer voluntary benefits like critical illness or pet insurance.
And instead of trying to reprogram the dinosaur mainframe, they just go out and buy a smaller, innovative company that already sells voluntary benefits.
So they just inherit that smaller company's entire software ecosystem.
Precisely. And then maybe they buy another company for dental. Suddenly you have one brand name on the outside, but internally it is a Frankenstein's monster of disjointed databases.
So the medical system runs on code from the 90s, the dental system is on an early 2000s server, and they literally cannot speak to each other.
Which forces the carrier to treat a single human being as 3 separate customers.
And the sources specifically call out how these misaligned systems are a primary culprit for billing errors and inconsistent producer compensation.
Oh, it's a nightmare for billing.
Right. If the medical billing cycle triggers on the 1st of the month, but the newly acquired vision plan triggers on the 15th, the employer group gets 2 different bills.
They get confused, they pay the wrong amount.
And then the broker who sold the policy doesn't get their full commission on time.
It creates an enormous amount of operational friction. So Majesco's solution here is what they call a one-document experience.
Using the policy module as the single entry hub.
Exactly. But what I find really interesting is that they aren't forcing the carrier to abandon their existing storage solutions.
Okay, let's break down the technical side of that, because the documentation throws around some heavy terminology there. It mentions integrating with DAS or Laserfiche for claims.
Right.
What are we actually talking about with those?
Well, DAS stands for Document as a Service. It essentially means the actual PDF or image file of a claim isn't stored locally on a hard drive.
Where is it?
It's hosted in a secure cloud environment where it can be instantly called up by the software via an API. And Laserfiche is a highly secure enterprise content management system.
So like a digital, hyper-compliant filing cabinet.
Exactly. one that many large institutions already use and deeply trust.
So Majesco is basically saying, hey, you can keep your trusted digital filing cabinet, but we are going to build a unified interface so your employees never have to leave the main screen to go dig through it.
Yes, they are decoupling the user experience from the data storage layer,
Which is so smart.
unifying the experience on a cloud-native, open API foundation reduces the total cost of ownership because IT isn't spending half its budget just keeping the old systems glued together.
And more importantly, breaking down those silos unlocks richer clinical and utilization data across the entire portfolio.
Right, and once that data is unified and clean, the actual flow of money gets drastically simpler.
Which brings us to the financial engine of this suite: billing, commissions, and underwriting. There's a phrase in the presentation I really appreciate: protect every payment.
It's the lifeblood of the operation. If premiums aren't collected accurately, and if the producers, the brokers and agents selling the policies aren't paid correctly, the business collapses.
The mechanisms they are using to protect those payments are fascinating. They're utilizing APIs to capture accurate credit for backdated contracts. And they highlight cleaning up pay-to hierarchies. I want to pause there because that sounds incredibly complex. What actually happens when a pay-to hierarchy breaks down?
Well, in insurance distribution, you rarely have a simple one-to-one relationship between the carrier and the person who sold the policy.
Right. It's not just me buying a policy from Bob.
Exactly. An independent broker might sell the policy, but they work for a general agency, which might be under a national master aggregator.
Oh, wow.
So a single commission payment might need to be sliced into 3 different percentages and sent to 3 different bank accounts.
And if a contract is backdated?
Oh, that's where it gets messy. Say an employer realizes in November that they actually hired a new employee back in September, and they adjust the policy retroactively.
Calculating who owes what and who gets paid what commission for those missing months.
It is a mathematical nightmare if done manually.
And if the system is siloed, someone is literally trying to do that math in Excel, and they will inevitably make a mistake.
Guaranteed. So Majesco is automating that entirely.
They also have a philosophy listed here: save surprises for birthdays.
I love that line.
It's great. They are specifically aligning change effective dates, like midstream amendments or endorsements, directly with billing cycles to avoid out-of-cycle billing surprises.
So if you change your policy on the 12th, you don't get a random prorated bill on the 14th.
Right. It just seamlessly integrates into your normal end-of-month invoice.
Which dramatically reduces the call volume to the customer support center from confused employers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But moving over to the underwriting side of the financial engine, I found what might be the most surprising detail in the entire stack of sources. The intelligent underwriting section touts all these modern advancements. It uses cloud-native workflows. It's designed to drastically increase, quote, turnaround times and RFP participation.
Also, a carrier can scale their revenue without having to hire a small army of new underwriters.
Exactly. High automation, low headcount growth. But, and this is the crazy part, right alongside all this talk of agentic AI and cloud architecture, the presentation explicitly highlights that they are keeping Excel-based rating entirely in the platform.
Yes.
That stopped me in my tracks. We have this cutting-edge AI teammate, but we are intentionally preserving Excel. That feels like installing a cassette tape deck into a spaceship.
It really does seem counterintuitive at first glance.
Yeah.
If you're modernizing, why keep the ultimate legacy tool?
Right.
But if you examine the psychology of enterprise software adoption, this is actually a masterclass in change management.
Walk me through that. Why does an underwriter need the cassette deck?
Because underwriters are highly specialized, deeply analytical professionals. They have spent their entire careers building, testing, and trusting incredibly complex Excel workbooks to determine risk and pricing.
Okay.
If you roll out a shiny new cloud system and tell an underwriting team you can never use Excel again, you have to trust our new black box calculator, the cultural rejection of the software will be immediate and fierce.
They will just secretly do the math in Excel anyway and manually type the final number into the new system?
Exactly. And that manual data entry creates what the presentation calls spreadsheet drag.
Meaning it slows everything down?
It slows the whole process down and introduces the risk of human error when rekeying the numbers. So Majesco built a bridge.
How does the bridge work?
They allow the underwriter to continue using their deeply familiar custom Excel workbooks as the user interface. But the actual calculations and the underlying data are anchored securely inside the cloud platform.
Oh, wait, that is clever. So the Excel file isn't just sitting on some underwriter's local desktop where it could be accidentally deleted or get corrupted.
No, it's tethered to the main brain.
It respects the user's comfort zone and their domain expertise while still providing the enterprise with the modern scalability and strict auditability it requires.
It designs the software around the reality of human behavior, rather than forcing the human to behave like the software.
Okay, so we've modernized the brain with AI, we've unified the data silos so the medical and dental systems can actually talk,
We've automated the complex commission math.
and we've kept the underwriters happy with their Excel. But the true test of any insurance core system isn't how well it sells a policy. The true test is what happens when things go wrong.
Right. Both for the customer filing a claim and for the IT department trying to keep the servers running.
Recoverability and compliance. This is where the unseen heavy lifting happens. And the technical details in this section of the Spring 26 release are pretty dense.
Very dense.
So let me throw some of the jargon out, and I'll need your help translating it.
Go for it.
They detailed tighter controls on disability and WOP reserves. They highlight straight-through payments utilizing NACHA. And they've built enterprise batch resiliency orchestrated on Azure Logic apps. Let's take those one by one. First, what are WOP reserves?
WOP stands for waiver of premium.
Okay.
If a policyholder becomes severely disabled and can no longer work, many life insurance policies have a clause that waives their requirement to pay premiums, but the coverage remains active.
Wow. Okay, so for the insurance carrier, that is a massive financial liability.
Huge. They aren't collecting money, but they still have to hold enough cash in reserve to pay out the death benefit eventually.
So tighter controls mean the system is more accurately calculating exactly how much capital the carrier needs to legally hold in reserve for those specific cases.
Exactly, which frees up other capital for investment.
That makes a lot of sense. Next, straight-through payments with NACHA, NACHA.
NACHA is the National Automated Clearinghouse Association. It's the network that facilitates electronic transfers, like direct deposits, across U.S. banks.
Got it. And straight-through payments.
That means once a claim is approved by the system, perhaps verified by that agentic AI, the money is routed directly into the claimant's bank account through the NACHA network.
Without a human being ever having to manually click approve or print a check.
Exactly. Or reconcile the bank statement at the end of the day.
Nice. And finally, enterprise batch resiliency on Azure Logic apps.
Well, insurance relies on massive batch processes, like updating 1 million policy records at 2:00 a.m., for example.
Right.
Azure Logic Apps acts as an intelligent traffic cop in the cloud. If a server hiccups halfway through processing those million records, the Logic app recognizes the failure, isolates it, and automatically restarts the process from the exact point of failure.
Instead of the whole system crashing and forcing an IT engineer out of bed to manually reset it.
Exactly.
Speaking of IT troubleshooting, there is a new feature that caught my eye called the triage recorder component.
Oh, this is a great feature.
The presentation explains that users can easily toggle debug logs on and off to capture system details without having to submit a formal Salesforce support ticket.
Right.
So if an absence specialist hits a glitch, they essentially hit a record button, capture the system state, and send the package directly to support. It's basically like giving the pilot of an airplane a button to instantly hand the black box data to the mechanics on the ground.
Instead of filling out an incident report describing the turbulence,
Yes.
the black box analogy is spot on. The friction of trying to replicate an intermittent software bug for an IT support ticket is universally maddening.
Oh, it's the worst.
The triage recorder removes that friction entirely, expediting the analysis and getting the user back to work faster.
Which is critical because those users have a lot on their plate, especially when you look at the Claim Vantage updates for PFML. That's paid family and medical leave.
The compliance maze here is dizzying.
Dizzying is an understatement. The release notes detail how the system now automatically handles Maine's non-standard private plans, Delaware's combined entitlements, Minnesota's minimum time rules, and Colorado's highly specific neonatal intensive care unit leave laws.
And it automatically calculates the 2026 average weekly wage updates across all supported states.
Right. How does a single software system handle that level of conflicting legal contradiction?
Well, historically it didn't.
What do you mean?
Absence specialists would literally keep sticky notes on their monitors, reminding them that Colorado calculates wage replacement differently than Minnesota.
You're joking. Sticky notes.
Seriously, it was a manual nightmare, completely ripe for compliance fines. But what Majesco is doing here is using a highly parameterized rules engine.
Parameterized meaning the rules aren't hard-coded into the base software.
Exactly. Instead of writing entirely new code every time a state legislature passes a new family leave bill, the system relies on flexible variables, or parameters.
Oh, I see.
So when Minnesota changes its minimum time off requirement, the carrier simply updates the specific parameter for Minnesota in the system settings.
The core mathematical engine remains the same, but the logic dynamically adapts to the new state variable instantly.
And by automating these hyper-specific, ever-changing rules, they drastically mitigate the carrier's legal risk.
Okay, so synthesizing all of these sources.
Yeah.
We started by looking at an internal software release presentation, but what we are actually observing is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
Majesco's Spring 26 release is designed to take life, annuities, and health operations out of a posture that is inherently manual, siloed, and bogged down by spreadsheets.
And replaces it with an architecture that is unified, automated, and genuinely intelligent.
It's building a foundation that doesn't just tolerate the incredible complexity of modern insurance, it utilizes that complexity as a competitive advantage.
It really is a central nervous system upgrade for the enterprise.
But, there is a lingering thought I can't quite shake. Well, the presentation states early on that the ultimate goal of all these capabilities, the agentic AI, the straight-through payments, the automated compliance trackers, is to help teams focus more on what matters most.
Right, which is the standard promise of enterprise automation, freeing the human worker from repetitive tasks.
But it raises a profound question about the future of this industry for me. If the session-aware AI is handling the complex multi-step workflows,
Right.
if the APIs are flawlessly calculating the pay-to hierarchies for broker commissions, and if the parameterized rules engine is navigating the brutal, contradictory math of Delaware and Colorado state laws,
Where does the human fit in?
exactly, what will the human insurance professional of 2030 actually do all day?
It shifts the entire value proposition of the human worker. If the machine handles all the logic, the math, and the regulatory heavy lifting flawlessly, the human is no longer needed as an information processor.
Does the job become entirely about providing empathy?
I think so, yeah.
Think about the context. When someone is utilizing that highly specific Colorado neonatal intensive care unit leave policy, they are likely experiencing one of the most terrifying, vulnerable moments of their entire life.
Absolutely.
They do not need a human being to spend 3 hours calculating their average weekly wage. The system can do that in a millisecond. What that claimant needs is a human being to listen to them,
To understand their panic.
and to assure them with absolute certainty that they and their family are financially taken care of.
And that profound level of human reassurance is something no co-pilot, no matter how auditable or intelligent, can ever truly replicate.
Wow.
It's a fascinating paradox, really. By fully automating the cold mathematical reality of insurance, a platform like this might actually force an industry historically known for dry paperwork to finally become a business defined entirely by human connection.
What a phenomenal thought to leave on. A massive technological upgrade that might actually give the industry its heart back. We encourage you to ponder how that shift from information processor to empathetic guide might apply to the automated future of your own field. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Majesco Spring 26 release. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we will catch you next time.